Good day, my name is Christel from Frans de Klerk Independent Technical Analysts. Tracy was very keen for us to start with Sibanye. And Tracy, I can only look at this part of the graph because the history is incorrect on this platform. But at the moment, Sibanye is caught within this falling wedge formation. Now, technically, and remember these are weekly graphs, so if by Friday's close, Sibanye continues to consolidate above 35 Rand 52 and closes above that, that formation will be confirmed, which also means that this can act as a bullish flag formation, which is a continuation pattern, implying that the overall trend in Sibanye can continue to the upside. I mean, when the share found support here around 1672, it bounced back to 4022 and retraced. And see how beautifully it's found support on the 40-week moving average. And that weighted at 31 Rand 69. The share found beautifully support there and then rallied to higher levels. Now the big test is that 35 Rand 35 level on Sibanye. As long as the share continues to consolidate above that, we can see higher prices on Sibanye. What is a little bit of a concern is that every pullback has got a long tail at the top of the candles, and that implies selling pressure. And every high of the candle is a little bit lower than the previous high, which implies lower highs, and that is seen as loss of momentum and a concern. So technically, we can only feel a little bit more comfortable with Sibanye when it changes 39 Rand 39, which is the high of this candle, into a support. And then obviously the other resistance that needs to be overcome is waiting at 41 Rand 70. Also take note, Trace, how close this lower band of the wedge is to that red line, the 40-week moving average. And that implies the importance of that support. So we can assume that when Sibanye, and if Sibanye starts to consolidate below 32 Rand 12, the first warning bell will ring to say, be concerned, we might see the next lower high confirmed, and the long-term sentiment towards Sibanye will remain positive, will change to negative. If you want to trade it and you want to buy it above 35.45. I would use a stop loss there of 30 Rand 33 and use that possible target there, as I said, of 41 Rand 70. And then hopefully if the momentum escalates, it can maybe change these resistances levels into a support as well. 47.55, 48.41, and then obviously that high of 51 Rand 55. Rufus wanted us to talk about a share less than 150 Rand. That was his requirement. And Rufus, I've decided to show Shoprite. That's just from a technical perspective. This graph is implying a little bit of optimism. There are higher lows on the graph, and we can see that every time the share pulls back, it finds support at a little bit of a higher level. And that implies higher lows, and that is seen as positive. The other thing I like about the Shoprite graph, Roofs, is the fact that we might be building here on a double bottom formation. So there was a pullback, it found support, it bounced, found resistance, retraced again, and that support was almost at the same level as the previous support level. So some might not call it a double bottom, but just refer to it as higher lows. So should this this up leg of Shoprite continue, even if there is a pullback, even if it continues and this previous resistance changes into a support, the double bottom will be confirmed. And that is an optimistic turnaround pattern. So that resistance is waiting there at 128 Rand 50. If Shoprite can change 128 Rand 50 into a support, that possible double bottom will be confirmed. The big test, however, Roofs, is this red line. That represents the 40-week moving average. And that is waiting at 119 Rand 64. If Shoprite can change that level into a support, the long-term sentiment towards it will change to positive, and it might be the first sign that the buyers are becoming stronger than the sellers. Also take note the importance of this level, because you can see in the past, the 40-week moving average was a critical level, and there weren't enough buyers to change that level into a support and, to escalate the momentum to the upside. So a critical level to watch, 119 Rand 64. Once that changes into a support, it might be an opportunity to buy Shoprite. If you want to use a stop loss, use 92 Rand 51. And then what is a possible target for Shoprite? It will be, let's take the conservative leg, the shorter one. It's the length of the leg projected upwards from the neckline where that formation will be confirmed. So that means a possible target for Shoprite will be about 157 Rand 26. I will only be concerned about Shoprite again when these support levels below 99.09 changes into a resistance again, and this low there at 95 Rand and 1 cent. If that level changes into a resistance on a weekly close, we can assume then that the momentum to the bottom can escalate even further. I mean, the all-time high of Shoprite was March 2018 with a high of 281 Rand and 90 cents. Sanele wanted us to look at Naspers, one of the darlings of our market. But Sanele, I'm afraid at the moment from a technical perspective, I'm a little bit concerned for a couple of reasons. One, I've got two consecutive candles there, not next to one another, but with long upper shadows. And those candles imply a possible shooting star candles, meaning that the selling pressure might escalate and that we can see lower levels. So I've got two shooting star candles, and remember these are weekly graphs, so that candle should continue to look like that by Friday's close. The other concern is the fact that we might be sitting here with a double top formation, and it is early days because that double top formation will only be concerned when this neckline changes into resistance, and I'm going to give you that level now. And also take note that, Sanele, that the resistance there was at the same level. And that tells you that level, and I'm going to give you the exact level, 3,277 Rand and 70 cents is a strong resistance on Naspers. And only when that level changes into a support can we assume that the momentum to the top can escalate. So the negativity or the pessimism will remain in place as long as that level remains a resistance. My double top formation will be confirmed when 2,788 Rand and 29 cents changes into a resistance. Below that level on a Friday close, Naspers will confirm a double top formation, which means that the momentum to the bottom can escalate maybe back to my red line, the 40-week moving average, and that is waiting at 2,509 Rand 84. If these resistances at 3277.70 changes into a support again, then all the negativity will be wiped off the table, that formation will become obsolete, and we then can assume that the momentum to the top will continue again, the buyers will be stronger, and that they will lift the share price to higher levels. If you want to consider a short and you maybe want to use the opportunity to trade a short, you can go short below 3,089 Rand 92. I would give a little bit of breathing space for my Naspers, maybe use an average true range to determine that, but 3,280 Rand as a stop loss level, and you can use all these support levels as possible targets to the bottom for Naspers. Kevin wanted us to look at Jubilee. A beautiful bullish flag formation was confirmed on Jubilee, and I mean, how beautifully, Kevin, having tested that red line, the 40-week moving average in that week of the 15th of June 2020, when 72 cents was tested. Beautiful long lower shadow. It confirmed that the buyers were stronger, and now this bullish flag is confirmed, which means the continuation pattern is in play. And now the big question is, how high can it go? Now, a conservative target is usually the length of the channel projected upwards from where it was confirmed, which means a possible target for Jubilee is about 91 cents. Also keep in mind, a continuation pattern means that the overall trend will continue, which means that if these resistance levels of 93 cents and 95 cents changes into a support, we can see the same upside that we've seen here, which is about a 50% rise to the top as well from where the upper band confirmed the bullish flag. So you can see maybe Jubilee back at about 1 Rand and 1 cent. When will I be concerned about Jubilee? When this level there around 80 cents changes into a resistance. So if you don't have it at the moment, I think you're too late. It already rallied quite a bit. So rather wait for a decent pullback if you're lucky, and then maybe, accumulate it. But I would not accumulate Jubilee at these levels, but there's some nice upside. And it tells you all these lower shadows on the candles tells you that there's buyers that continue to support the share price to higher levels. Humpo wanted us to look at Kumba. And I call it the share on steroids because it almost always ignores technicals and it just does what it wants to do, whether it's selling it off or buying it. But Mpo, what is concerned at the moment on Kumba is that for 3 consecutive weeks, every candle's high is a little bit lower than the previous one, and that implies lower highs. It implies loss of momentum, and it tells us that the sellers are keen to take profit. Also take note that the resistance that we found here in July last year is at almost the same levels in July this year. So technically, my first confirmation of negativity will be confirmed when these levels there at the bottom at about 480 Rand 61 changes into resistance. So if you want to wait for confirmation of negativity, then you can consider a short below 480 Rand and 13 cents. And I just want to clear those drawings. Possible stop loss will be about 533 Rand 33. And then what is possible targets to the bottom? Now, we always prefer to look at 4 windows that can act as possible targets. Now, we've got a window here on Kumba, and that is waiting between 389 Rand 14 and 392 Rand. So that window, and that acts as a gap. Now, a window almost works like a magnet. If there's contradicting poles, they pull it towards one another. But if it's the same poles, you almost can't bring it close. So when that window opened, we assumed that the momentum to the top continues as long as that window remains open. But if the sellers start to come in and it turns around, it can also act as a magnet where the sellers pulls it back to that window to close it. Because remember, the rules around windows are they always get closed, but nobody knows how long it's going to take. So that can act as a possible target for a short on Kumba. But remember that 40-week moving average, also a nice level to look at, and that's waiting at 378 Rand 57. That can act as a possible target for a possible short on Kumba.